Mr. Chairman, your meeting's live. He's on. He'll probably raise his hand. Senator Anderson. Senator Guru.
Here.
Senator Nethercott. Senator Salzar. Chairman Kinski.
Excuse me. Sure. And as we know, we can only deal with the dollar amount that's in the bill. So have we got somebody here that wants to talk about House Bill 4? Sure.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Stephen Johansson with the Wyoming Department of Health. Really just here to answer questions you might have on how we calculated or projected the cost and the enrollment. But just a brief background, this was a committee bill from the last interim from the Joint Labor Committee. Last summer, they asked us to come present on an option from the federal government that was put into the ARPA legislation that allowed states to extend coverage for the pregnant women category in Medicaid from 60 days postpartum coverage, which we currently have, up to 12 months postpartum coverage without the use of a waiver. So currently, and for the past, for many years, states could extend postpartum coverage for pregnant women, but only through the use of what we call waivers, which have their own bells and whistles and strings attached, reporting requirements, federal budget neutrality, et cetera. This option from the federal government through the ARPA legislation allows states to extend the postpartum coverage through what we call a state plan amendment. So much simpler on the administrative side, much less restrictive for the states than waivers. So the Joint Labor Committee asked us to present on that, basically what the option would look like, what we would project in terms of enrollment during those extended months of coverage for individuals who give birth and then stay on Medicaid for that 12-month period. We did that report to the committee. You can see some of that articulated in the fiscal note, although it's very brief. But to summarize, we did an analysis that was a bit easier to do because over the past couple of years, as you all know, states have been prohibited during the federal public health emergency from disenrolling any Medicaid members by way of accepting an enhanced federal match rate, which all states have over the past 2.5, 3 years or so. That allowed us kind of a natural experiment, since we haven't been disenrolling members, to study what the cost, what the utilization, and what the enrollment would look like if we extended the postpartum coverage. So we completed that analysis. We anticipate that on a monthly average, we would see an additional 1,250 members in the pregnant women category. And we estimate that total cost would be about $3.8 million. And you'll see that articulated in the fiscal note as well as in the bill. Again, can certainly answer questions about that methodology, which I am very comfortable with, given the additional and the better data we have by nature of being able to study that during the non-disenrollment period. Mr. Chairman, I'll just close by saying, because I've received this question a lot, so maybe preemptively answer it. This does not expand eligibility. This takes the same eligibility that we've had in the pregnant women category, which for years and years has been pregnant women under 154% of the federal poverty level. That eligibility criteria would remain the same. What this extension does is extend the time of coverage postpartum from 60 days to 12 months. So again, not an additional expansion, not an additional group coming on, but really just extending the time that those women would be covered on Wyoming Medicaid. And Mr. Chairman, with that, happy to answer any questions you all might have on the cost, the appropriation, and any methodology that we use to get there.
Any questions for the agency on the cost? Any question? Yes. Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see that the monthly enrollment is estimated at 1,200 eligible members. And so that 1,200 figure, is it accurate to say, or if you could correct me, that approximately 1,200 Wyoming women are giving birth while on Medicaid coverage?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott's a good question. We see currently around 30 to 35% of all Wyoming births being on Medicaid. I'll have Mr. Fuchs to my left answer your question in more detail. But just to summarize, again, what we looked at was, and how insurance plans typically look at these types of costs, is what you would see on a monthly basis. So if you extend the coverage, how many additional members on a monthly basis would we see in that category? And we do have significant amount of churn, members of the committee in Medicaid. So folks come on and off at different time periods. And so we try to average those out and smooth them so that we can give you best estimates. But Franz, if you have those figures, if you'd provide them, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Franz Fuchs, Policy Analyst, Department of Health. Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott, to answer your question, ballpark, there are around 6,000 births in Wyoming total every year, and of those, around 2,000 are Medicaid. So about a third, and that's approximately the number of women who are, would benefit. Now, this is an extension of the time period, so the same women would be benefiting; they just be benefiting from a longer period of time. And so our rolls on a monthly basis go up, but it's essentially the same number of people who receive the health benefit. If that makes sense.
Mr.
Oh.
Chairman, this is connected to the fiscal note. Do you have an average age of the woman, of those 2,000 women who are on Medicaid giving birth?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott, we do not offhand. I'd guess obviously between 20 or 30, but we'd have to get that to you.
Excellent guess. Just curious to know how many of them are kind of multiple births, knowing the frequency then of these throughout. And I'm just curious about those stats. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for the agency? Any other questions for the agency? Hearing none, thank you very much for your presentation. Any other agencies? Any public comments on House Bill 4? Public comments. Is there anyone on Zoom? Nobody on Zoom, nobody in the room. We'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, sensing the body's ready to vote. Linda, please call roll, please.
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Guru, Senator Nethercott, and Senator Salzar.
That House Bill 4 has passed the Senate Appropriations Committee. On to House Bill 11. House Bill 11, State Park Rangers Retirement. We probably have some old park rangers here to talk about this.
Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you. Darren Westby, Director of State Parks and Cultural Resources. With me today, I have Deputy Director Nick Nealon, as well as our Chief Ranger, Mark Coughlin. I believe we also have Mike Blakely with the Wyoming Retirement System to help with any actuarial questions or costs that you may have that may come up. He should be online. Okay, very good.
Just a minute. Would you close that door?
Yes.
I'm having trouble hearing here.
If we could, Linda, just
Thank you.
bring him in, just because I'm sure the questions are going to be probably more aligned towards the retirement system, because that's where most of the costs are. But Mr. Chairman, just briefly, this bill, we realized over the course of the last couple of years that our state park law enforcement rangers were not included in the law enforcement retirement plan. And so we asked for an interim study, and gratefully our Chairman Nethercott took it up as an interim topic, and we studied this and crafted language over the course of the interim to try to see what it would take to bring them into the law enforcement retirement program. Our law enforcement rangers are fully post-certified law enforcement officers. They have the ability to arrest, they have the ability to citate, they have the ability to do anything and everything a regular law enforcement agent can do within the state. Also, I think one of the bigger things that they do both in season and off season is assist local other agencies that are in need of mutual aid. Usually where we're say Platte County, for instance, where Glendo State Park on a normal busy weekend could be 30,000 people, 30,000 visitors in Glendo State Park. We'll have one full-time law enforcement, one seasonal law enforcement. And so we're relatively understaffed. However, if you think of Platte County that has a population of 8,000 people, we more than almost triple their population on a weekend. And so the added law enforcement is definitely a need. I don't know how much you really want to go through the reasoning behind it, but the bill itself changes a couple sections within the statutes. One, the definition of law enforcement adds state park ranger, full-time state park rangers. We have 5, by the way, right now, current. We're not asking for the seasonal rangers to be brought in. We're not asking for the superintendents that happen to be post-certified to be brought in, just the 5 full-time law enforcement agents that we have into the system. Yeah, so then there's an option within the bill that these law enforcement state park rangers have the option of either opting in to transfer over to the law enforcement retirement or staying in the existing state retirement system. We have one that it makes more sense for them to stay in it. He's currently already in the law enforcement retirement, so this is a second profession for us. We're fortunate enough to pull him not necessarily out of retirement, but working for us. So it doesn't make sense for him to go back into law enforcement. So we created the option for these law enforcement people to do that. Then also it sets a date in which they have to, Mr. Chairman, that they have to elect whether to go in or stay in, go into the law enforcement or stay in the system. That's, I believe, in April of this year. And so, Mr. Chairman, that's really the meat of the bill. The cost to the agency is going to be about $5,000, a little over $5,000 a year. That'll go towards the increase of the cost associated to the state by doing this. So a little over $10,000 a biennium to make this happen. The actual cost to bring them over to the new system is a little over $186,000. And Mr. Bleakley can probably go into any of those discussions about the actuarial costs as well.
Questions? Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple clarifying questions then. So is the 10K biennium figure on an annual reoccurring basis or just a one-time to start it up? Secondly, I see that there's $186,000 for the LE plan, which would need to be fully funded in 24. Is that also just a one-time cost? And then lastly, and this, I guess, I just want to be clear, there's no additional authorities that are given to go from a job prescription to go into these other plans. So maybe you can help me with some of the.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Salazar, thanks for the questions. No additional authority goes into, they're going to continue to do what they've always done. They have the authority right now to do what they're doing. The cost of a little over $5,000, it's an annual cost. So it'll be a biennial increase that we will see in our 100 series benefits package that will go towards that to make that switch. The 186, and Mike can probably confirm, but that's a one-time cost to bring them over. So they're already, the 5 or the 4 that come over, they already have a pot of money in the retirement system, the big retirement system. So to bring them over to the law enforcement retirement, the delta to make the law enforcement retirement plan whole by that switch is that $186,000.
And then just to follow up, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman. So how many are we, is that all we're dealing with? Is just a few folks? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, yes, we have currently five full-time rangers that would be affected by this.
The 186, we're not dealing with the 186,000 today, though. That you're saying is in the future, in fiscal year 2024, you've got to come back and get that money to do it. We're just dealing with the 5,000 per year in this bill, right?
Mr. Chairman, and I'll let Mike talk about the 186, but the $5,000 a year or the 5,000 for this year. And realistically, there's enough vacancy savings to cover that now that could cover that $5,000. But going into the BFY 25, it will become a standardized portion in our 100 series section. Yes.
Right. Right. But we don't need to make the LE system plan whole. We're not doing that in this bill. That's what I'm saying.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd probably let Mr. Bleakley, Deputy Director, talk a little bit about the retirement system and what they're requesting.
Okay. All right.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Anderson and Senator Salzer and Director Westby. It's good to be with you. I'm Mike Blakely from the Wyoming Retirement System. This bill does not provide an appropriation to the retirement system, nor is it asking for one. Basically, when we had our actuaries do the analysis, what's happening is these 5 people, and Director Westby already alluded to, one of them is already retired, so he would not transfer. So you'd only have 4 people that are really affected. Their balance in the public employee plan, which is the plan they're currently in, would be transferred to the law enforcement plan. The law enforcement plan does have a more enhanced benefit than the public employee plan. And so when our actuaries did their analysis, basically the 186,000 is partially offset by the contributions that are transferred. So it really comes down to 132,000, which is less than 0.01% of the total assets in the law enforcement plan, which is just under $790 million. So it's about one day's market fluctuation is really what it comes down to. And so our actuaries and the retirement system concurs that basically the transfer is immaterial. It's not, you're not going to hurt the funding status of the plan. And so that's why there's no request for an appropriation, because it's basically saying this is such a small amount compared to the full balance of the plan that it's not going to make a difference. It's not going to hurt the funding status. And so we can make this change without having to have the need for an appropriation.
So the only ask you have is a 5,254 annually.
Mr. Chair, so that's not from our department. The retirement system, there's no appropriation that we're asking for.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think the standard budget is where we'll pick this up right now. I don't know that we're necessarily asking for $5,000 more in general fund to make this happen. We feel that where we're at with vacancy savings, we should be able to cover the 5,000 to get us through this biennium and make this transfer happen. I mean, it will come up in standard budget for sure as an increase to cover this.
So what I hear you saying is if we eliminated your ask here of 5,254 per year, you'd be all right with it?
Mr. Chairman, just for this year, we have enough this year to cover that $5,000.
Well, this doesn't ask for it till 24. This is 24, 25, and 26. So
Right.
23, you're okay. You're not
Mr.
asking for it in 23.
Mr. Chairman, when this, I believe this takes effect July 1. So it would be fiscal year 24 that we can cover. And then it would go into our request for a standard budget for the BFY 25 budget year budget.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I can. It actually goes into effect immediately, allowing for participation in April of the 4 members to transfer over. And so it would be the remaining time period of that fiscal year, which would be de minimis. And I'm grateful that he has 5,000 some dollars in his budget in the event to cover that. But yeah, it'd be de minimis, I think, for 2023, the remainder, and it kicks in 24.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, thanks for catching that. I had too many bills in my head on effective immediately versus July 1. And unfortunately, we do have some vacant positions that in our agency right now that having a hard time filling. So the covering of the funds is available right now.
Okay. All right, any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions for the agency? We have any more presentation? No? You guys just came for looking good, huh? Well, you fulfilled your duties. You're looking good. Any other agencies like to speak on this bill? I see a legislator here would like to speak on the bill. Senator, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Ag Committee heard this bill and we referred it to you. I realize it isn't a lot of money that we're talking about, but we all know that the retirement for law enforcement is not as healthy as our other retirement accounts are. And so eyes wide open for this committee. I'm sure it's something you'll be dealing with in the interim. I wanted you to have your eyes wide open as far as dealing with this. We all agreed that it was appropriate. We know that our law enforcement suffer more physical wear and tear with their jobs, and retirement comes earlier for them. And right now, these officers don't have that benefit. So we'd love to see this change occur, just with eyes wide open, knowing that we have some work to do on that account.
Senator, did you understand that he might not need that $5,000 in fiscal year 2024? Or are you thinking we should fund that?
Mr. Chairman, I would defer to the agency on that, whatever he indicated to you. He knows his budget better than I do.
Questions for the senator? None? No?
Right, thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any other public comment on Zoom or in the room? No? Okay, we'll close public comment. Move the bill. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, in response to the chairman of AG's comments, as a recipient of law enforcement retirement and a member of the Ryman Retirement Liaison Board, I'm acutely aware of the concerns with the law enforcement retirement as it would affect me directly. So I pay close attention to the health of that fund and certainly care deeply about how well that fund is funded. So look forward to working on that in the interim.
Other comments? Other comments? Hearing none, the question's been called. Please call the roll.
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Guru, Senator Nethercott, Senator Salzar, and Chairman Kinsky.
House Bill 11, State Park Rangers retirement has passed this committee. Yes, we did. Four?
Medicaid.
Yeah.
Okay, super.
So we're ready for you
Yeah.
and the
So Linda, we can go ahead and go offline. We completed our business.